My hand trembled as I touched the edge of the mirror. The glass made a faint clack and vibrated. Behind it wasn't a wall, but a pitch-black cavity, a narrow tunnel. I turned on my phone's flashlight and leaned in. What I saw nearly made me drop my phone. A large, hollow eye was staring back at me from the darkness. It blinked once, then vanished, as if the wall had never opened. I moved into a place by myself in November 2022, into an old apartment on the 3rd floor of a 5-story building in the outskirts of Buffalo. Apartment 302. It was suspiciously cheap, but I'm a freelance journalist with inconsistent income, so I didn't think much of it. Cheap was all I needed. The apartment was small with old wooden floors, a large window overlooking a parking lot, and a narrow hallway leading to the bedroom. The moment I stepped in, I felt a chill along my spine. But I thought it was just the greenery around here making the air cooler than the usual city heat and bustle. Until one day I realized that every morning I woke up, the bathroom door would be slightly ajar, even though I always made sure to shut it tight the night before. I tried to rationalize it, thinking maybe I had just forgotten to close it. But by the 4th night in a row, I started putting a roll of toilet paper behind the door as a test. The next morning, the roll had been pushed nearly 30 centimeters away. I didn't own a cat, no rats, so I installed a small camera in the living room aimed down the hallway toward the bathroom door. That night around 3 a.m., I woke up and checked the footage. There was no clear movement, just a faint blur, as if someone passed quickly in front of the lens and vanished. A creeping sense of unease started growing in me. I inspected every corner of the apartment more closely. That's when I noticed something chilling behind the bathroom mirror. It was a small gap, like a utility opening. When I knocked on it, the echo was loud, like there was a hollow space behind it. But according to the floor plan, there was no room there. The next night, at exactly 3 a.m., I heard strange sounds, like the groaning of someone suffering from a terrible illness. The groans grew louder and more frequent. It wasn't my imagination. I was sure the sound was real. I contacted the building manager and reported the strange occurrences, but he simply reassured me I was probably just exhausted and imagining things. When I pressed him, he stayed silent. Then I noticed a partially covered note on the front desk, 302. Recheck the lock on the utility hatch. Tenant reports noises at midnight. 302. Tenant reported strange electrical disturbances at night. 302. Reinspect the ceiling system. The moment the manager saw me glancing at the notes, his face changed. He slammed the notebook shut and rushed off with it. His reaction confirmed it. For me, something was definitely wrong. A few nights later, at exactly 3:17 a.m., I received a call from an unlisted number on the apartment's landline. I picked up. No voice, only a soft rustling sound like fabric brushing against the wall. It lasted 8 seconds, then cut off. I frowned. The landline could only be accessed by the building staff, and none of my friends would call like that. I got up to check the phone, rubbing my eyes, and froze. The cord had been completely severed, dangling loose. So where had the ring come from? I couldn't sleep. I began packing my belongings with the intention of heading down to the front desk and checking out early, even though I'd paid for a full week. Safety first. The dim yellow light reflected on the old tiles, casting a haze over the warm mist from the sink. I was collecting my things when my eyes passed over the row of mirrors above the bathroom sink. A red smear appeared behind the mirror, like someone had pressed a blood-soaked palm against the wall and dragged it sideways to the left. I stepped closer. The metallic smell of blood hit me like a punch, tightening my stomach. It wasn't paint. It wasn't rust. It was something like fresh blood still wet. My hand trembled as I touched the edge of the mirror. The glass made a faint clack and vibrated. Behind it wasn't a wall, but a pitch-black cavity, a narrow tunnel. I turned on my phone's flashlight and leaned in. What I saw nearly made me drop my phone. A large, hollow eye was staring back at me from the darkness. It blinked once, then vanished, as if the wall had never opened. I slapped myself hard. I felt the pain. This was real. I wasn't dreaming. Panic took over. I staggered backward, heart pounding, and bolted out the door. Before leaving, I slammed the bathroom door shut, terrified that whatever it was might follow. Down at the reception desk, no one was there. But the security monitor was still on. I looked at the screen. It showed the hallway of the 3rd floor. Apartment 302. The door was wide open, but I had shut and locked it. Then I saw it. A dark figure appeared slowly, gray, headless, drenched. It didn't walk, it glided across the floor, dragging severed legs behind smearing blood-red chunks along the tiles. It stopped at the door, then turned toward the camera. Under the gray, mottled flesh, it was the manager's face, distorted like flattened against glass. Eyes rolled white, a smile without teeth. I couldn't return to the apartment. I wandered the frozen streets all night, desperate to reach the one friend I trusted. The moment I picked up my phone, I sensed footsteps behind me. I turned. The manager was standing there. I froze. My phone slipped to the ground, but thankfully my friend had already picked up the call. The manager reached down to hand me the phone. Panicked, I kicked him and screamed, fleeing into the freezing night. Breath, steaming hands, trembling, I redialed the only number I trusted, Todd. A gray car pulled up. Todd jumped out, wrapped his coat around me. When our eyes met, I could tell he already knew something horrible.
"You were in 302 Buffalo,"
he asked. I nodded. He swallowed, eyes fixed on mine.
"I know that place. That building used to be a mental hospital, shut down in 1979. There was a mysterious death. No one ever dared reopen that case."
I stood frozen like I'd just escaped a war.
"There was a patient named Ellen. No one knew their real gender, but the file listed male. He was isolated in a special bathroom cell, no bed, no window, because he'd constantly slash his face, scratch the walls with his nails, and use his blood to draw symbols behind the mirror."
I shivered.
On November 17th that year, Ellen was found dead in the cell. What haunted people the most was his eyes. The pupils were gone. Only fine shards of glass, like grains of sand, were embedded deep into the sockets. But none of the room's glass objects, including the mirror, had been touched. Everything was still in place.
I was speechless. The next day, I returned to retrieve my belongings, this time with a local police officer. Morning sunlight filtered weakly into the musty hallway. I led the officer to the bathroom, pointed straight at the mirror. I told him what I saw: blood behind the glass, a strange passageway. The officer sighed clearly, thinking it was nonsense, but he allowed me to remove the mirror. It came off easily, but behind it was just smooth concrete. No cracks, no holes, no sign of a tunnel. Nothing. I stammered, terrified. But it was here I saw it. There was blood and end. The officer stayed silent, but the sympathy in his eyes faded, replaced by suspicion. He looked at me like I was delusional. He gently suggested I see a doctor or take medication. I pleaded. Maybe it only appeared at night. The manager scoffed, shaking his head. Said he'd never seen someone as crazy as me. I couldn't convince them. I glanced again at the manager, remembering the camera footage. I begged to review it, but the camera only showed me panicking and running out. Nothing else. I left the building, but the unease didn't leave me. I thought I'd gotten away, but whatever it was, it never intended to let me go. I moved to a new apartment over 200 miles from Buffalo. Tried to start fresh, but every night at exactly 3:17 a.m., I wake up. No phone ringing, no knocking, just the feeling that someone is standing outside my bedroom door, watching me through the gap. I tried sleep logs, infrared cameras, relaxing oils, sleep psychology books. Nothing helped. One snowy night in January, I checked the footage. There I was sleeping, and in the corner where shadow met nightlight, a figure slowly appeared. Faceless, staring at me, mouth stretched in a toothless grin, lips moving in silence. It walked to the mirror. Then a red smear, fresh, spread across the glass, like a severed finger bleeding from within. 3 months later. Todd didn't say more, just pulled an old file from his coat pocket. The yellowed paper edges frayed. On the cover, missing case. Intern Dr. Ellen Gray, 11/17/1979. I flipped it open. Each line constricted my throat.
Ellen Gray, male 27, intern doctor, disappeared during a night shift at the 3rd floor isolation ward of the psychiatric hospital. He was investigated for torturing patients, overdosing meds, solitary confinement in bathrooms, forcing patients to stare into mirrors for hours, but no charges were filed. The victims either vanished or went insane, incapable of testifying. There was a faint, nearly erased handwritten note. A week after the disappearance, the city sealed the entire 3rd floor. The 1980 building schematic shows a small utility cavity behind each bathroom used for pipes and wiring. But after the incident, they were all filled with concrete.
I returned to Buffalo. Not by choice. Anonymous messages had begun flooding, and you cannot stay silent. I packed hastily voice recorder camera, folding knife, and public archive files about the old hospital. What I found was worse than Todd's story. I returned to the building. That night, I stayed at a nearby hotel. At 3 a.m., I snuck back in through the basement. By flashlight, I found a rusted metal door, welded shut but poorly. Someone had broken in before. I slipped through. It was tight, damp, choking. A long, moldy hallway led behind the 3rd floor rooms. I stopped behind apartment 302. I heard something. A whisper, half moan, half laugh. I pressed my ear to the wall, groaning. Then a slicing sound behind me. I turned. A tall, wet figure was crawling down the corridor. Faceless, I ran, didn't breathe, didn't look back. I shoved the door open and collapsed outside. When I looked again, the hallway was empty, silent. A week later, I received a package. Inside, a grainy black and white video of a hallway. 3rd floor, all doors shut. A man in a white lab coat stepped out, his face unclear, but a voice hissed through the static. So stay silent. Then the figure turned to face the camera, and in that moment, I recognized him. It was the same building manager. Not someone who looked like him. I couldn't breathe. So many questions. Who was the manager I met? Who handed me the phone? Who appeared in the surveillance? I shuddered. I don't know what they want. I may never understand.